I'm Kristin Allan. I'm going to take you through a tour of the recruiting module, part of the SuccessFactors solution suite. I'm just going to do a really quick run through here. At the moment, I'm here on the home page, and we can tell at any time, because of the top left-hand side, we're going to be able to see which module we're currently in at. So I'm just going to quickly show you the home page. Now, because this is a sales demo site, I do have my disclaimers. We always try and upsell, so of course you are going to see all of the modules that do become part of the SuccessFactors suite. But when you do go live with your solution, you'll only be able to view the modules that we've actually implemented for you. And if at any time you do forget who you are, we can always see it up at the top right-hand side. We have your name displayed. The solution will also allow you to go through and proxy as another user, which I may potentially do throughout the demo. But you'll be able to see on the top right-hand side exactly which user I'm logged in as. So if we tell you to go home, we don't mean to go home. What we're talking about is to go home to your home page here, where we can go through and start viewing our personalized tiles. At any time, I can go through and I can drag and drop tiles around. And I can also turn on and off tile settings. Because these are sticky settings, when I log out and log back in, my tiles will stay exactly where they were before. An important tile here is definitely around my team. So myself as Carla Grant, I am a manager, but at the same time, I'm also a user, so an employee of the organization and a part of the system, but I could also have other roles. With the cloud-based solution, it's going to allow us to create what we call as role-based permissioning. So I only ever need to have one login, and that'll give me access to different functions and to perform different tasks within the solution. I also have a to-do, which is great. So similar, when we're looking at with our Outlook calendar, I can also now be able to go through and start to manage my tasks within the actual solution itself. So here I've got it through my due now, my due later, or due anytime. And we will come back and look at that a bit more detail when we go through as the recruiter view. To start off with the recruiting module, I'm going to continue on as Carla Grant. Now Carla is an employee, but also Carla is a manager. So I'm now going to go through to the recruiting module. As I mentioned before, we can access the modules that we have implemented through our Home tab. And it's going to take me through straight away to our job requisition dashboard setting. Now, dependent on the role-based permissioning, this will then determine who has access to this module. So we can say it's all hiring managers or recruiters, and if you've got any talent acquisition specialists, etc. Because it's a highly configurable site, we're also able to enable your naming conventions that you use internally to then display on the site. So now we're going through to our recruiting module, and you're going to be able to see the job requisitions dashboard page. Now I get very excited about this page because straight away I can see at a quick glance exactly where we're up to with the requisitions that are associated with me, either as a hiring manager, or if I was part of those other roles as a recruiter or a talent acquisition manager. I can go straight away and see with my candidates forwarded. I can see any new candidates, and etc. I'm also able to personalize my display setting here. So I can then go through and start to tailor this to ensure the right information which is appropriate for myself as the user or the role to be able to see on this dashboard. As before with the home page and those tiles, this is also a sticky setting. So when I log out and log back in, the same display options will also be selected. I can then also be able to go through and start filtering down to specific filtering options for our job requisitions. I may wish to always see all job requisitions, or I'm only interested in the ones that are currently approved. Now, as a hiring manager and any other roles that you seem deemed appropriate when we start looking at the approval process, but also looking at the management of the application, we can start embedding approval processes, but also role-based permissions specific on where we're at with the application process. But for right now, because we're looking at it as a hiring manager view, I'm going to be looking more around that pre-approval process. So here, we can configure your actual job requisition forms to have specific information dependent on which role you're logged in as. For example, you may have your hiring manager raise the requisition, but then it may go to a senior or a director level in which they may not be required to actually go through and edit any information. They're only in there just as a view. Then you may send it off through to your recruiter to have that final review and sign off to then be able to start managing that job. We're able to configure to the level that you require that pre-approval, but also being able to tailor our job requisition pages with the actual language you require for your fields, but also what information do we need to populate in there. Now, as a hiring manager as well, or dependent on our roles, we also have a great tab in here with Interview Central. Now, it's fascinating with this function in here, is it's also going to be compatible with any smartphones, tablets, etc., just by downloading the SuccessFactors BizX app. Through your tablet or smartphone, you're also going to be able to have access to the Interview Central, but also what we were reviewing before, that job requisition pre-approval process. You will also be able to approve or reject your job requisitions. But more importantly, let's focus on the Interview Central here. So as I mentioned before, you're going to be able to access this through your smartphone or your tablet device, or through your PC or your laptop. What's exciting with this, especially if you have to do those back-to-back interviews, there's nothing worse than making all those notes there on a piece of paper and trying to transcribe that at the later date. I have access to this straight away on the go, and I can actually start going through and making my interview comments and notes and ratings while I'm in the actual interview itself or while I'm going in between interviews. This is going to assist you with with getting that information about that actual candidate back to the recruiters or the required roles, so then we can start making them flow through the process. Especially in a candidate-driven market, it's really important to make sure that we grab a hold of those suitable candidates as soon as possible before we lose them to our competitors. So here, I can base my interview assessments based on a competency profile that I've associated with my job rec. And then here, as my interviewer, I can now see all my people. I can go through at a very simple click of a button and go through and start rating my candidates. I can then also leave any additional comments. So why do I feel that Larry has a sense of urgency as a competency, and how I can see that he exceeds expectations? I can upload still my interview notes. So if you do still have a particular priority of making hand-based notes, or for some reason you may not have internet access because it is a cloud solution and you will require this in order to make the comments online, you can upload your interview notes, and then I can use an overall rating and any additional comments. Now on the right-hand side here, we'll see our stack ranker. So say if you are doing, mass recruiting at the moment and you're interviewing 100 candidates, I'm going to be able to see my stack ranker here of all the candidates that I'd seem suitable for this job. Now, as I know I've mentioned many a times, and I will mention it throughout the demo, with our role-based permissioning, especially on this cloud solution, I can then start to permission who has access to what. So we're seeing all these tabs up the top right-hand, all the top side. We're going to be able to permission who has got access to each of these individual tabs or hyperlinks here. So for Carla as hiring manager, we give her a lot of permissions here. We've got a lot of faith in Carla, so she does have access to a lot of options in here. But because it's a highly configurable solution, you'll be able to choose what you require. So with having our candidate search, what we're able to do and I will show you a little bit later in the demo how a candidate can also go through and view jobs and apply for jobs, but we're creating our own candidate portal and our own way, or I guess if you look at a candidate pool, where myself as a recruiter or even a hiring manager can go through and start proactively maintaining and marketing to potential candidates to join our organization. So here I can choose any potential keywords, or I could look any particular information, especially around background information. I'm looking for someone who has a particular previous employment, potentially within marketing. And look, I like my competitors' organization, their staff that they do hire. So I could look for people with particular backgrounds, or also language skills, or look, we are potentially in 6 months looking for this role to be moving overseas. This is part of the configuration process, which we'll go through with you when we do our kickoff and configuration workshops. Now, I can also go through and start having my saved searches as well. So you may have a particular role that you do need to recruit on a very regular basis, say customer service skills role. I can actually create a saved search. So instead of having to go through and enter the information every time I jump in, I can have a saved search already located in here to go through and start seeing any new candidates that are now part of the search. So now we've gone through as a hiring manager, we've been able to see that they can go through and be part of the pre-approval process, but we can also permission them to be part of the actual candidate application management, which I will show in a moment. We can give them access to the candidate pool to be able to go through and search or manage and maintain any candidates. And through Interview Central, we're enabling our interviewers, which could also be the hiring managers, to have easy access and a portal to be able to manage those interviews and be able to give quick, real-time responses to the interviews. I'm now also going to log out, and I'm going to log back in as an actual recruiter. So now you'll see part of this simple solution of being able to log back into the solution. Now the site is also able to be configured for single or same sign-on, so we can also bypass the requirement for having to enter in any login details. Same thing, we'll work with you during the implementation process to see which solution fits your needs best. So now I'm going to go and log in as Lorna. Now Lorna in this space, she has multiple roles. So remember, she's a user, so she's an employee, but she's also going to be our recruiter for the instance of this demo. Now, can we see here straight away when we've logged in as the recruiter, my settings actually gone through to the recruiting module instead of going to the home page like we had with Carla. The awesome thing with the solution is it has multiple sticky settings throughout the solution, meaning that Lorna was able to configure this so that when she logs in, it goes directly to the recruiting module. Her being the recruiter, that's where she spends a lot of her time in this module, being able to manage and maintain the recruiting requirements for the organization. As we mentioned before, we're able to also go through and filter down and see what we're actually, wanting to filter our options down with the job recs. Now here are the job recs that are associated with Lorna. Okay, and we can see straight away Lorna's been listed here multiple times as the recruiter. She's very popular in here. So now if we pop through, I'm going to show you through the actual candidate management. So going through to our candidate application status pipeline, we're able to configure this to very much meet your requirements. You may have a very lengthy application trail, or you may have a sweet, simple solution. As little as lots as you need, we can tailor the applicant status trail to fit your needs. So here we've got our invited to apply, which all candidates will go through if we wish to invite them to apply. So how could we do that? We could be sent a candidate from another internal role who said, look, Bob might be of interest for you to have a look at. Or through our candidate search, which we saw before as Carla, we can also invite them to apply through that process. New application, which all job requisitions will have part of their pipeline, is the bucket for all new applications when a candidate applies. As I mentioned before, we will go through to the careers portal, and I can show you as well the candidate view of being able to go through and search and apply. Here we've got rejected and auto-disqualified. Now there are awesome statuses there, especially around the auto-disqualified. Look, don't like saying awesome in the terms of, look, you've been rejected for this role, but we're able to configure it that we can have automatic emails be fired off. We can configure that we can have delayed email fire off for that auto-disqualified. So we can create, let's say, disqualifier questions. So part of the application process, I have a requirement that you have your updated passport and visa requirements in order to be able to travel to 6 different countries. If you don't meet those needs, we can actually have an auto disqualification process happen with that application. Nothing worse than applying for a job and then receiving that, sorry, you were not successful straight away. So we can actually have a setting in here to have it set for 1 hour, 2 hours, 48 hours to be sent later. And in here, in the middle section, is very much about what I was mentioning before, about being able to configure application statuses, which are very much specific to your organization. You may have a very lengthy process in which you require multiple interviewing statuses, assessment, background checks, etc. Or as we can see here, here's a very simplistic process of going through the application process. As a recruiter with Lorna, I can see straight away within these statuses how many candidates and which candidates have actually been allocated within here. So we're going to look at Barry. I've got a short list here now as a recruiter. I can see Barry's application details. And I'll also be able to see some audit trails and background information about Barry. Because sometimes it's good to know what other, I guess, job recs, or if we're looking at jobs, that Barry's also applied for. Nothing worse than any of those serial appliers out there going through and applying for the past 100 jobs. You can straight away have that visibility of what Barry is applying for. But also as a common courtesy, because we're now starting to create a shared candidate portal, we're also able to see with my other colleagues who's also working with Barry and what status is he up to. So straight away, I can see here he's also applied for my sales coordinator role, an administrative assistant role, which unfortunately, look, he was disqualified. And I can also see here he has applied for the director to drive expansion role, and he's up to the interview assess part. Here's the information that we can also see against Barry, so information in regards to his application, but also information in regards to his profile, which I will show in a lot more detail when we log in as the applicant. So having our one-stop shop with the cloud solution, I'm also able to go through and perform multiple functions within the one module. So here I can go through and print application detail at any time. I can also go through and email Barry. Now, part of the implementation and configuration process is we will go through and help you with creating an email template library, but you can also create ad hoc emails on request. I can go through and create meetings, so go through and locking in a specific time with Barry. And I can also go through and forward to other requisitions, so I manage multiple requisitions as a recruiter, or I may forward on to another colleague, which I know Barry would very much suit their requisition that they're currently working with. Now, we've also got on here an interview scheduling option. And this is going to allow us to be able to manage within one portal the interviews that we require with our internal and external candidates. So I can create an actual time block to be able to post out to my candidates to allow them to be able to go through and either select a time frame. So I may block out between 10 and 2 to be able to do my interviews, and the candidates can go through and select a time that best suits them. Or I can drive the interview time and say, Barry, you're locked in for 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Please confirm. This is the same thing going to trigger off any auto email notifications. But also, which I will show you a little bit later, we'll also give them access in the portal, the candidate portal, to be able to maintain the jobs they've applied for and where they're up to on the status. So here, these are all the requisitions that have been assigned to me that I have been allocated as an interviewer. And in here, I can go through and start managing those interview slot times. Now, taking you one last brief look within the application as well. I've mentioned we can have automatic emails go out. We've been looking at the auto disqualified, which we can delay that. But also with each one of these statuses here, I can also start to configure who and what email will be fired off. So say if we have a status here with background check, I can configure an automatic email be fired off to say our background check manager, that when, say we bring Larry and bring him into background checks, they would automatically get an email notification saying that there is Larry in there required for a background check to be initiated. I can also then have an email go off to the hiring manager to let them know that another candidate has progressed within the steps. And also the recruiter. So the recruiter is always being aware of which candidates are at which statuses. I also have the option to be able to go through and I can perform actions with all of my candidates. I can move candidates, or by moving, I can also simply drag and drop. Now we're going to go through and we're going to have a look from the candidates portal. So now let's jump on in through the candidate portal or the careers page. Now we can see here, and this is for our external candidates, and I'm logged in as Flo. I've got options to be able to go through and search for available jobs. I can go through and I can see any job management, so that's any jobs that I've currently applied for, and also my profile, which I'll show you in a moment. So also, as an internal candidate, so we were looking, before with Carla and Lorna, they've also got access directly through that solution to a careers page, looking fairly similar to this, where they can go through and they can start to drill down and filter to find jobs which are very much appropriate for themselves. Part of the configuration and implementation process, we will go through and ensure we've got the correct images and text displaying on this page here. So look, let's log in as Flo and let's have some search for some jobs. So we can see there's 20 jobs currently available for external candidates. And here's its return the list. I can then also go through and be able to sort by any particular preference, so relevance, job title, distance, etc. But look, I'm very excited about this video producer job. So let's jump on in and have a look. Here's the information. So this is the job ad in which we're going to display out to our external candidates. The exciting things with this cloud-based solution is that we're able to tailor our job ads dependent if it's an internal or an external candidate. Because look, sometimes we do display it very differently when we are pushing out to that external market for our candidate selection. So here I can apply. I can also apply using LinkedIn. So it's going to bring that base information from LinkedIn and apply it over into your profile settings, which you'll see in just a moment. I can save the job because look, I might not be ready at the moment or I don't have the time to start putting my application together. Sharing is caring, so I can also email this job to a friend. Or look, after reading the job profile or the job information, this really isn't the right thing for me and I can return to that job list. But look, Flo's very excited about this job, so let's apply. So now this is going to take you through to that My Profile screen. So I don't know if you remember back when we were looking at that candidate search option when we were in as Carla and also Lorna. We were able to select different background or selection criteria as part of that candidate search. This is where the information is going to get pulled from. Yes, it's going to take any kind of keywords that come from our CVs, but also information that we have against that profile, it's also going to pull that relevant information from. So it's really important to make sure that we've got that correct profile information set up against our candidates so we can then proactively start managing and maintaining our candidate pool. So here we can see Flo has been great. She's populated all the correct information through, and now we're going to go through next. Now we're going to see the actual application. Part of the configuration and implementation process, we're going to ensure that we have the right information in there and that right terminology dependent on what type of application or potentially on location, what you require in there. So here, anything with that red asterisk means it is a required field, so we'll need to make sure we go through and put that information in. Now, we were also talking before about that auto disqualified option. Here, we can see questions down the bottom of the application form. We can create these as just standard questions, so we want to collect some information about our candidates, or we can make them as auto disqualifier questions. So here, I'd say potentially this is one, are you authorized to work in the U.S.? If I've selected as no, and this job is actually required to be working in the U.S., we could have this as an auto disqualifier question. So it's helping us do that shortlisting for us while we sleep. The questions also, the pre-screening questions we'll call them. It's also great because it's going to allow you to tailor your application form. So it doesn't have to be that one size fits all. Yes, we have our standard fields here that we require in our application form to collect the information, but depending on the job, there's other information that we do need to go through and collect. So I'm just going to go through, start completing the information, and I'm going to go through and apply for this job. Straight away, it is telling me I haven't gone through and filled in all the required information. So anything with that asterisk there, I'm going to go through and make sure I populate that in. Look, I'm not going to say yes there. Let's say no. I haven't been done for a crime, and let's apply. Now, as a candidate, I can also go through and maintain my jobs I've applied for through job management. So I can see there, see here, this is that video producer role. and straight away it's going to be showing up. So everything's on real-time for the system. So this is for the job management. I can also see here I've applied for a sales digital role. Now the great thing with the solution is that we can also create multi-stage application processes. So depending on where the candidate is through the application process, we can also make that application be editable throughout the pipeline. So we were looking before as Lorna, when we were looking at our candidates to that application status, we can configure that depending on the status or that step in the pipeline, that candidate's required to log back in and supply more information. For example, when we get to reference checking, we want to go through and ask the candidate to supply some referee details when they get to that status. Being in a candidate-driven market, we need to make sure that we're making this as simple and as quick as possible and enjoyable for our candidates when they're applying for our jobs. So best just to get that basic information in the beginning of the process and start to collect more the later and further they get through that process. So thank you so much for today. I hope I've been able to show you all the exciting pieces that you can manage and view through the recruiting module.